Hello, my name is Julio Santos, and I'm the technical co-founder of Fractal. We're hard at work building the Fractal Protocol, which will enable privacy-preserving radical markets for data to help keep the web open and free for everyone. With me today in this transatlantic call is Dana Budzyn, currently executive at YouGov in Los Angeles, an international research data and analytics group. Dana was previously founder and CEO of UBDI, a pioneer in the field of community-driven universal basic data income. Welcome, Dana. I'm a fan of your work, and I'm very happy to speak to you today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm also a fan of what you guys are doing, so I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, you're a pretty impressive character. I mean, like from biomechanical engineering to the NASA to UBDI. I mean, can you walk us through your journey and how you came to this focus on like monetizing data, universal income? Like, what happened there? What's your story?
Yeah, it's been a very, I guess I took a couple pivots in my short time on this planet, but ultimately I got sick at age 18, severely sick, coma sick. Would not recommend that for anyone. And I got sepsis, and it kind of just started introducing me just through the fragmentation of health systems because I was in many different hospitals. I had like 15 different doctors. I really struggled with collecting my health data, which was actually that first step of like recognizing this or being introduced to the entire data landscape. So then I, here and there for all these things, I went back to college and decided to study. I was already in engineering, but decided to do biomechanical engineering. And after doing an exploration of that, decided that might not be the thing for me. And I actually met someone who was looking at data. They were taking a different twist on data, which was trying to create an algorithm with everyone's collective data and give them basically better returns on their investments. So I kind of explored that for one of my summers in college after NASA, just to try something new, and fell in love. That was not executed, nor went like I wouldn't be vague on the experience, but it literally went absolutely nowhere. It was one of those things where people have good ideas but can't execute. And long story short, when I left college, I just said, you know what, I really believe that people should be fairly compensated for their data, and I want to give it a whirl. And I loved the concept of universal basic income. So I decided to call the company Universal Basic Data Income and try to like get people paid when they consented to share their data. So that was
that is a perfectly great mission. I can totally relate to that. What I'd like to talk a little bit more today about, though, is what you're doing now with YouGov Safe. So I was wondering if you could walk us through the story of the product and the core idea behind it. What's the value proposition? What does it bring to the world?
Yeah, so YouGov Safe is actually a relatively new product for YouGov. But the one thing that I saw at UBD, which people never knew how to pronounce that, but the one thing I saw there was like any startup that is both trying to raise money and you are also trying to, of course, focus on your product, also get users in, teach them about this new concept that 3 years ago was still kind of like barely getting off the ground. We really struggled with the chicken and egg problem when it comes to data, which data is valuable in aggregate, and you can tell people that their data is valuable, but ultimately until you, then they start to say, oh, well, I gave you my data, I deserve a reward for that right now. And it deserves to be a lot because I, read an article that if you divide Facebook's revenue by its number of users, that I should be getting $500 in this moment or whatever that is, right? And so there was just this education piece that didn't work out. And there was this chicken and egg problem where you're constantly trying to fight people to get them in, but needing this longer term reward to get enough data to make it valuable to companies. And so YouGov, because I am answering your question, I swear, I do ramble, but we're getting there. But YouGov is uniquely positioned because they have about 14 million global worldwide panelists. For a market research and data analytics company that have having people contribute 20 plus years of survey data, right, over and over again for the last 20 years. So now they're like very uniquely positioned to to take a, try to shift into this behavioral data space and to build on top of their existing products for clients that they already have with an existing client base, but also have those people start to contribute more behavioral data, saving these people time on taking surveys and all the rest of it. So I think YouGov Safe kind of got born out of the need for new digital, like just basically out of digital trends, out of the fact that they wanted to be innovative, out of the fact that they're uniquely positioned to solve that chicken and egg problem from the very beginning, and start getting people paid right away, which will enable a lot of really cool things to come in the future that I'm sure we'll talk about after this, but really kind of jumpstart that stepping stone that's needed, that so many startups, even like my own, really struggled with and like either failed or pivoted or whatever because they couldn't reach that critical moment.
And what can a user of the product do with it now? Like, what value is it delivering today?
Yeah, so we just launched, and we're actually doing a small rollout right now. So if you went to the site, you wouldn't be allowed in quite yet. So in like probably a week to 2 weeks, everyone will be allowed in. But ultimately, you're able to come into it's very simple right now. You come into our system, you can link. It's a browser extension, and there will be data sources that are not in the browser extension, like banking, and you're basically able to link data such as Netflix data, Disney Plus, Chrome browsing history, Spotify, YouTube, basically your different apps and website sources. And when you upload those, you get a payout every week for a couple of data sources, every month for other data sources. And based on the data that you link, you are then also offered additional projects. And every single data source right now has a YouGov project where you basically enable us to take these insights, package it, and make everyone more money. But then you can also, we will have specific client-specific projects that will pay you even more money to basically contribute, whether it be Spotify data or YouTube data, something specific for that client, for that project. And you'll, get your consent forms that tell you how this is going to be used. You'll get how long it's going to be used for. You'll always have the right to delete this data. And you get compensated through points that you can cash out. Right now, I think you can cash out for either cash or gift cards, but we're expanding that to like Bitcoin, charities, the whole rewards system, so you can get whatever it is that you want.
That's really cool. I love it. Like it's another big piece in educating folks that their data does have value. Might not be exactly as they think it does, but this whole education effort is something that is really important to do. And I'm really looking forward to you guys opening up your beta to the world and letting more folks in. What kind of future developments can we look forward to? Like what you guys have done in the pipeline, that'll be super interesting for folks to wait for.
Yeah, so this first phase is really focused on making sure that while we add data sources, unlike what I did with my company where we added so many data sources and it was going to be so cool, we're really hyper focused on adding the right data sources and building products, which is my job, on top of those data sources. So for instance, for this, this first product that we launched is called Stream. And right now for the client side, we can give people really unique streaming statistics that they aren't capable of getting right now. And then on the consumer side, we're looking to build that very robust recommendation engine to add extra value, that it's not just about monetary value, but it's also about just the benefits of having your data in one place, that you can utilize it in different ways. So now you can see, oh, I watch Lucifer on Netflix. Now I can actually go and, Ted Lasso would be the perfect show for me. And I
love Ted Lasso.
I love Ted Lasso. I was watching it last night, which is why this example came to mind. But then you can get those recommendation engines across all these different streaming services, right? So similarly, as we add sources in gaming, we'll be spinning up products for the client side to make sure that there's a monetary value that we can return to the user. I should call them members, but user is just such an easier word. But return to the members. And then we'll also start spinning up maybe even some like gaming stats and competitions that you can get paid for and all that kind of fun stuff. Right now we are, and you are going to talk about Fractal as I hope you would. We're actually a little less focused on like that next step because we fundamentally believe our unique position is to start getting people, get them used to these consents, get them used to what their data is being shared and what it's for, and educating them in that process instead of having them read things, view videos, all the rest of it, kind of just have them become part of that flow and get used to it on a very global scale. And that's what we can contribute to, you know, the Web 3.0, the data position, and then branch from there. So I'd say for now, like, while it may seem limited, that's our really core first step. And if we can nail that, then there will be millions of people across the globe that are now familiar with this concept and maybe more inclined to, you know, check other privacy practices or use other privacy tools and start to really look at their data differently.
Got it. I think that's a really good way of doing product discovery.
Yeah.
So Dana, you've been promoting the importance of free speech and insights from anonymous research for a while now. And I'm wondering, like, how do you expect user behavior to change online in the next few years, given that, like, we see a couple of things, right? That there's mounting awareness of privacy issues. You know, in ad tech over the past year, there's been, like, you know, the whole Google deprecating third-party cookies, Apple with the IDFA, and naturally all this is self-serving, but it has a really positive impact, which is it makes folks aware. It makes people that, like, you know, didn't really think much of digital privacy before, started to think about that. And that coupled with regulatory developments, like, how do you think that we will use the internet differently in the future?
Yeah. So a hot take is, I don't think when we start to use the internet differently, people are going to necessarily notice. I think it's going to be one of these things, like all the things you mentioned, the regulatory, the big companies. I think these shifts are going to happen in business practices of changing their value propositions because of that lack of trust that's starting to happen. They're going to be more transparent about how data is used, and people are going to be grateful for that, or they won't buy a product, or they'll be grateful for that, or they'll be angry at you online, whatever that is. And I think, you know, I hate to say people will only ever be aware. I'm not saying they won't download products or use new products. We've seen, as you know, Brave Browser, one of the probably bigger companies that's got, you know, millions of users and traction. People are clearly shifting away from the Googles of the world as people roll out these new incentives to, you know, pay people as they search and whatnot. At the same time, I definitely think, you know, my biggest fight with people in the privacy community, maybe this is counterintuitive to our talk, is they always say one thing and I go, look at TikTok. I go, like, think of how much data is being collected on TikTok. And I love TikTok and I would not sacrifice it for anything because it gave me a big enough value proposition that I love spending my time on there, that I would sacrifice a lot of things, right? And so I think what's going to be key to shifting people's behavior is it's going to be probably more unconscious. Like, I think the fact that cookie banners show up on the bottom of something, most people just still click allow. Like, it's not really changing what people think of cookies or their privacy space. I think it's really going to be up to these new regulations, the big companies shifting. It's going to have a really good space for small startups to kind of make a name for themselves in the privacy space and make a user experience that's easy enough that people aren't really going to know that they're making their life more private. It's just going to become an inherent part of a tool or an app or a system that they want. And that's my take on it.
I think that you're right. I agree with what you said. I think there's another force at play, which is like, I often have a conversation with folks that tell me, but Julio, like, your the way like the world doesn't work like you think it does. Like you are a nerd, so you care about privacy. This is your thing, right? Like most people do not. And I think that this is misguided. I think that people care a ton about their privacy. They just do not understand that it is at risk online. Like you pay a lot of attention to like, you know, who comes into your house. You might pay attention to the security cameras that you have in buildings or on the street. You don't show your documents to just anybody. Like people are, they have certainly different levels of sensibility and or even paranoia. But online, I think the fact is people do not understand the privacy erosion that has been happening over the years. And this is something that now I think is changing. And that is another force that will make folks more likely to adopt these new products that spring up in this wave. And also with the whole disillusionment of big tech in general. Like I know several folks that use Brave, and they don't have a BAT account. They don't get any rewards. They don't use any of that part. They just like that it's something they can install. And all of the settings, all of the defaults are great. Like, great, I'm protected. I can now navigate the web, right? So I don't think it's just about incentives. I think it's also making people understand that however much they care about privacy today, they might not be 100% aware of how it is being threatened online. And I think that this will precipitate change quicker.
And I think what you just said articulated what I was trying to ramble on about really well, is like this person downloaded a very easy system that they trusted with Brave, and it was immediate that they felt protected, that they had taken one easy step to do something, and then they didn't have to be aware. Like they took that one step to protect their privacy, but then they didn't have to be aware of everything else. It wasn't this convoluted process of what I need to download this and I need to do this and blah, 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 blah. It was one step. They felt protected. They trusted the brand. And then they don't have to be aware because they took that one step. So I do agree. We're on the same page. I agree.
And in a way, that's kind of what you get with Apple's message. Like you get an iPhone, you run iOS, and you can be, you know, to a certain degree, or you're told that you can be to a certain degree sure that your privacy is being protected. And, you know, naturally that has a ton of other monopoly-based concerns, antitrust concerns, sure. And centralization is never great. But it's that impulse is, you know, that if you use this product, you don't have to go into the settings. It works as you want it to work because you trust their promise to you. Dana, we're super aligned in this goal of like helping people be in control of their data and monetize it. Like something that I think we're going to have to leave for another interview because we're not going to have time today is you kind of touched on data portability, which is also a favorite topic of mine, but I'm not going to go there now. I'm just what I wanted to ask you is like this idea that your data has worth, that your data is valuable, has been around for a long time. Like this isn't new. This is something that ever since we started training machine learning algorithms, ever since we started training AI, and we started realizing, wait, they can replace us, but they're learning from us. So like, how do we so this conversation is decades old. Why is it that we're only seeing the first products now in the past few years getting any sort of traction around the idea of owning and monetizing your data? Like where do you think the resistance came from all along?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not even sure if it's resistant, resistance is the right word. I think people are cozy and companies were cozy and comfortable with where they were at, with what data they got, even if it could have been better, stronger, more insights, all the rest of it. If their company was chugging along, they were happy to take what data they could get and buy it and sell it and all the rest of it, right? And so I think GDPR obviously took the first stand, and that was in Europe, and CCPA, which has started to bring regulation over to the States. All these changing privacy regulations, I think, have forced companies to take a look at their own practices and see how regulation is going to change and force them to adapt. So I think because of that, I think there was a lack of funding for startups like this. This is my opinion. As someone who tried to raise money in this space like 3 years ago, I think because while it started to be a trend, the tides weren't quite there yet. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, investors were being smart where they were saying, I don't think people are going to necessarily care to change their data practices. I don't think this is going to be an added benefit to companies yet because they don't have to change. And there is some, there is some monetary value to having to shift systems that you use or data that you use or throw certain data away or whatever that is. And so I think between companies, it not being a need, it being a want or a better data, like something that could happen, but it wasn't a business need yet, I think shied people away from trying. And the people that did try, I think, struggled to raise enough money to really make it happen. Because it's an expensive initiative. You're changing the way that, like, in a sense, the internet would function and work. And that's not a small task. And it takes really big believers in it to like pool money together. So I think the other trend we've seen is not just people being more aware of their privacy, companies starting to like very much worry with the death of third party, cookies and whatever not, and shifting to their first party data collection systems. Like all of those things point to it, but now I think there's the VC space has warmed up to it and is now trying to bet on a couple of horses and put the necessary money in place to let people innovate, which just didn't seem like it was the case 3 years ago. So that's kind of my take, is it all worked in a system that if people don't believe it's going to happen or happen in a short enough period of time, they're not going to put the money up to bet on a horse, if you will. And now they're placing some bets.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor. That and just the general zeitgeist in terms of folks being aware that this is a thing. Those two things combined. I think there's a third factor that is quite strong here. Like a lot of these efforts, companies, products, initiatives, whatever you want to call them, a lot of these are somehow anchored on a blockchain, like Fractal is, for example. And I think that the blockchain space itself kind of helped propel this space forward for a couple of different reasons. And one of them is just, we're kind of like building a mini economy, or like not so much mini anymore, in the whole blockchain space, that it's generating wealth for a lot of folks for whom these issues are relevant. And a lot of them are developers. So that kind of like, there's a lot of overlap there. So there's a lot of funding coming from alternative sources now. But I think that another big factor here, it's certainly big for me, is that because blockchain can serve as this trusted ledger that everybody can use and it's transparent, then you can essentially securitize personal data. And what this means is that you have an additional incentive to try and extract value from data. Let me explain what I mean. Like if somebody's willing to pay me a certain amount per month for my browsing history, great. There's an app that helps with that. There's many, like Fractal does that as well. Like, that's good in itself. But if I can prove and others can verify that I do have this data, historically have been paid this every month for this data, then this becomes material that I can use for collateral for a loan. And this is just one of the many steps that you can take once securitization is in place, because once you have that infrastructure, you unlock a lot more value in data, because it goes from being just, all right, well, here's a piece of text, pay me, to a whole universe of mechanics of how that can operate. And also, obviously, privacy technologies like secure multi-party computation or compute to data or homomorphic encryption kind of open up new avenues to like using these data in a way that it's a lot less privacy invasive. So I think those are two other things that contribute to that.
No, I completely agree with you on that. And there are so many more uses for the data, that there's so many other ways as well of people starting to contribute their data to funds. Like this is an AI fund, and any AI that comes in and trying to, tokenize shares in like a new business or a new side of things. I completely agree with like all of the different use cases. And that blockchain played a major role in helping these things, at least the opportunities for things to shift faster, that really like sped, I think, or accelerated trends that were already happening, which was great. And then it's just a matter of now, I think, getting people on board in an easy enough way to start contributing in some capacity to the new data ecosystem, and doing so in a way that like anyone can understand, even if they don't have a fundamental, they don't have data knowledge, they're not a software developer, or they're not in data analytics or ad tech or whatever else. I think it's just opening it up to the masses, and what that looks like will be an interesting journey that I'm sure we're all continuing to discover.
Yeah, absolutely. So last big question, right? So as you know, the internet was built with no identity layer. And this was fine in the beginning, but turns out identity is quite critical for certain operations, like some payments or voting, for example. So as we move more and more of our lives online into the digital sphere, identity starts being something that is missing. And there's a lot of folks addressing that, including Fractal as well. And this essentially enables folks for convenience or accessibility reasons to be able to do online what they would otherwise have to do in meet space. So identity, digital identity, and it being available online is obviously something that is very useful. But on the other hand, anonymity can be a very important tool for people to state their true opinions, for people to and especially in the face of autocratic governments or peer pressure, social pressure. So there's this trade-off, right, or this apparent trade-off where identity online is something that is definitely desirable and something that will definitely enable a bunch more use cases, but at the same time it can be dangerous, right? So how do you view this trade-off? How do you view the pros and cons of the importance of digital identity?
Yeah, we struggled with that when we shifted Ubdi to more of a social platform. It started more as like pay people for their data, and we shifted it to a social where you'd have to contribute your data to get into a group of people, and then you would pick and choose which so that we knew that you were also a real person, right? So bot free, and then we'd allow you to pick and choose which attributes you want to share in that group around that topic. So you could post something and say, I'm I don't know, libertarian. I'm not a libertarian, but because whatever your political affiliation is, you could say I'm a white 26-year-old in this group, and in this group, I want people to know it's about pets, and I want them to know that I have a dog, and my dog is a golden retriever, or this and that. You could kind of pick these pieces of yourself, which is the beauty of what I think, that's not really able to happen with like a passport or this and that, but digital identity really allows that to happen, where you can pick you have your black box, you can kind of pick the pieces of yourself that you want to share around the space. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So I think for me, like just the idea that Twitter, if all they did was solve their bot problem, it doesn't mean people aren't going to be racist. It doesn't mean people are going to be extreme. But if Twitter, you knew that at least the person saying this was a person, and the 30 retweets that this got to try and make people hop on board because they think it's a popular opinion were also real people, I think it would be a very different conversation, and Twitter would be very different. They wouldn't be able to boost their user numbers the way that they do for advertisers, but it would fundamentally change the way that between Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of it work, because there's accountability, but also I don't need to know. You can have your avatar with your number name or your pseudo-anonymous name, right? But as long as you're actually verified in the background, whatever that looks like, I just think that that's where we should go. I think we need the systems that verify the identity. It doesn't have to be verified to each other per se. It's just that within the system, these people are verified, and then you can interact and be as hopefully lovely, maybe hateful, but hopefully lovely as you will on all of these networks. And I think that would fundamentally change a lot of our society for the better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my question was a bit of a trap, to be honest. I don't believe in this binary. I don't think this binary exists. Yeah. And I think that what is important is that you give people the tools and the choice. You talked about Twitter. I think that if a Twitter user feels a lot more comfortable only engaging with other Twitter users that verify their identity, then Twitter could build a feature in which folks can choose to verify their identity. They can choose not to. But if they don't, well, they won't be visible by folks that care about this particular attribute. And this is okay. You can choose how much you want to disclose, and that might be more or less relevant in certain contexts. And then you make that decision ad hoc based on where you are. You don't need to disclose a lot about you to go buy a piece of bread. It's very different than opening a bank account, right? You might want to disclose more than you would like to, get somebody's trust, make somebody else comfortable or something like that. And those are all choices that you make. And as long as you get to make those choices, I think that's okay. What I think is not okay is having a bunch of folks that I never heard of siphoning data about me and observing me all throughout wherever I go without me knowing, being compensated or wherever. But as long as I have the agency, as long as I have the power to say, this piece of information about myself is going to be available for these purposes, for this time to those people, then I have absolutely no issue with that. And I am somebody that likes to stay anonymous a lot of the time. I just think people need the choice.
I'll sneaky find your Reddit and I'll
you can't, you want, you want. All right. So Dana, as a last question, if you had a magic wand, and it can be a really big one, if there was one thing that you could change overnight in the ad tech space, what would that be?
Oh, I'm not going to give you the answer that you want. I feel like you want it to be about privacy, but if I
I don't want it to be about anything.
Okay, I was going to say, but if I could get rid of anything, all of the casino style ads across every publisher site, across the web, these flashing things on the right, on the up top, on the bottom, gone. They are gone. You get one or two. I will even look at them for like 5 seconds or something. You will have my attention for that time with that one ad, and everything else is gone. I hate that I'm trying to spend attention reading an article and I can't even find what the article is anymore. I'm like, is this a picture, a part of the art? No, it's an ad for pets. Okay, get rid of that. It's so distracting from good content. And I just cannot wait for that to, that's what I would get rid of immediately.
Yeah, I'm kind of, it's a shame that we got to where we are with the browser monoculture that we have. Where browsers originally were called user agents. And I really like that term. It's a very nerdy term, but it can be interpreted as it is somebody that negotiates your relationship to the web. Like there's this gigantic web, like tons of content, lots of bullshit, a lot of harmful things. And I stand in between you and it. And so, for example, websites offering a dark mode, that's great. Why, for me, that should be in the browser. You installing an extension to block ads, that should be in the browser. You not wanting to see certain words, that should be in the browser. This is your tool to navigate the web. And I would love a world where you don't want those flashy ads, that's fine. You tell your browser to block out those ads. You don't need cooperation from anybody else. You are running software that you should be able to control, and you should be able to get it to help you. And I think that things might change in that department a bit. Building browsers has become easier, where we have a lot of scrutiny around the biggest browsers right now. And with programs like Fractal, there's incentives for folks to build any kind of tool that could mediate this relationship with the user. So I'm very hopeful for that. But yeah, I can empathize with your wish. For sure.
Thank you. I also want your wish.
Dana, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all those great insights. And so from Berlin to Los Angeles, to have a really great day, and talk to you soon.
Yes, talk to you soon. Thanks. You so much. Bye.
All right, we're done.
Cool. That was fun. Sweating a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. I really don't.
You did fantastic. I know you're a natural on camera. What are you talking about?
This is a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. I just I don't know. I've got some sort of a blocker. I know if a camera is on me, I'm going to be stressed. I have no problem talking. I have it's that thing. I you made it very easy.
Don't worry. I actually I think Zoom helps because this feels like me talking with anyone. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it was in person and there was a camera, I sweating, can barely form a sentence. My mind spaces out. I can't answer questions. It's terrible. So I feel you.
Yeah. You made it very easy. This was super engaging, and you were what's the word? Super well disposed. And it really helps.
Oh, good. I ramble a bit, but I do get to the point usually.
Yeah, and that's what we want out of those things. I barely talked about Fractal here. That's not the point. We talk about Fractal elsewhere. This is about you. This is about what you've built, and this is about your contribution. I'm just kind of steering your ramblings.
I feel like it wasn't, I actually like that I'm not on your marketing team, but I like when people don't like Fractal was in there, you heard the pieces. It was good. Like I learned about Fractal while I was on this call. And like, I feel like you hit a lot of the hot points. It sounded really cool. It sounded interesting, which is what you want, but you didn't have to like shove it down someone's throat. Cause I feel like people hate shills, like people shilling for their own company constantly. And granted, I'm answering questions about this company, but I can also like say cons to the company that I'm in right now if I really wanted to. I wouldn't say it on a recorded call, but like there's obviously pros and cons to everything. And I think when people level set that stuff and don't try to spend the whole time just making a video about them, which there are probably actual user videos, right? And they're actually developer videos, then it's just more fun and it can go more places.
Absolutely.
So hopefully it was interesting.
It was. And Dana, if it's okay, like we've got our mainnet launch in like a couple of weeks. So that's all that is in my head right now. But like, you know, I didn't just say that in the end because it was my script. The script, that is true. This was pretty insightful. And I'd like to reach out again to have a bit of a longer chat about like what it is that we're doing. And if there's any like touch points, if there's any learnings that you've already went through that maybe I should know about. So is it okay that I reach out in a few weeks and we have a private conversation?
Yeah. I find myself, depending on the week, either really busy or really free. So depending on the week you get me on, that'll be fine. I obviously have to hold some stuff, not all things, but like some stuff closer to the vest. Cause I try to be as open with when I was at UBD, I was just like throwing information at everyone, but I have to be slightly more closed off with YouGov just because it's big and I would get in trouble and I want my job. So, but yeah, no, I'm totally happy to have a conversation. I'm very interested to hear, you know, because I want YouGov to expand past what they'll be doing. I want first and foremost for them to nail this because they're one of the few people around the globe that could do it, not just in the US, but on a global scale like this. And if that's the case, and like, you know, they may not be going for millions of people because they're more of a market research company. They were probably going for more like 500,000 people to start. But then if we do have those people all contributing their data, we're going to be looking for more things to either tools to provide for them, for like just both from like a practical standpoint, but also maybe we need to expand into some sort of browser. I would like to get the blockchain involved in some capacities. We found in some with our big company, it doesn't make a lot of sense, honestly. Like we've been like, does that make things better, more secure or whatever? And like the answer is no. So we're like, okay, that's just like a lot of tech to put blockchain on something. Or like a lot of money. Yeah, a classic, like let's put blockchain on it. It'll sound cool, but it didn't solve anything. So I'm definitely would love to keep the conversation going because I think there's things that I could learn from you guys. And if there's tools that like a YouGov or whatever could use in the future or like partner or whatever, like I'm always exploring those things. So happy to like look and learn.
Absolutely. Then let me resurface after these weeks go by and I'll definitely reach back out to you. I think that'd be a very fun conversation to have.
Cool. Yay. Well, I'm glad. I kind of ignored your guy, George, for a little bit, but I'm glad it worked out and that we actually had this call.
Yeah, me too. Dana, thank you so much for your time. Have the rest of a beautiful day and I'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.